Well, welcome to my channel. I did promise that I would compare and contrast the Kindle Scribe and the Supernote A5X. And that's what I'm aiming to do in this particular video. Now, it's known, I do love the Supernote A5X, but I have got pretty much every Kindle device out there. I've got this old Kindle. I've got the Kindle Oasis, which I tend to read at night. And I decided then just to go for it and get the Kindle Scribe because I love these devices. I use them daily. Let's see what I make of it. So if you're thinking about getting the Kindle Scribe instead of the Supernote, this video might be useful for you. If you're thinking about getting this in addition to the Supernote, again, that also might be useful for you, this video. But straight to it, I'm not going to give an overview of everything about these devices. I'm not skillful enough to do that. Voya's channel, My Deep Guide, is the place to go for really in-depth and excellent analysis of everything from hardware to software to various use cases. My use case is specific. I'm an academic. I read articles and books, and I write and publish, and I use the Supernote and the Kindle Scribe, and the books over there as well, to digest material, to process it, to annotate texts. That's what I use these devices for, and I'm not interested really in using these to write lots of notes independent of particular articles or books, writing a novel or something like that. None of that interests me. I'm not really interested in keeping a journal, although I do use Voya's daily planner in conjunction with other things. So that's my use case, and it may be that resonates with you or not. But I'm going to judge the effectiveness and usefulness of these devices from that perspective. And I'm trying in this video as well to have two videos going on at once, because there's another English guy who does it like this, and he does it a little better than me. He's obviously got all the kit that I've got. My phone is taking this video, and my webcam is doing the other one. So we'll see how it goes. But I just wanted to start with the Kindle Scribe. Now, obviously, you can see immediately they're roughly the same size, but there are a bit of a difference in terms of the dimensions that I'll come to later on that actually make a difference. But let's start off with the Scribe and its positives. So here it is. The first thing that needs to be said about this device is that its screen is stunningly good. It's I forget exactly, 300 dpi, and this is 250, something like that. There's not much in it. I mean, if you had a microscope or a magnifying glass, you might see a little bit of a difference. It's not the DPI that bothers me too much. It's the is this called front lighting or backlighting? I always forget. I think it's counterintuitively called front lighting. Whatever. Its lighting is equal all over. So I've got the books, this very large device, the A4 one. I forget exactly the name, but this has got backlighting. But the DPI really does make a difference with that device. It's much less, and the backlighting isn't as regular as the Kindle Scribe. It is lovely to read, whatever the lighting. It's a joy. It's also very responsive. I mean, this is a hardware issue. There's no two ways about that, but it's very snappy, and you can trust that this is going to quickly respond. I'm just scanning through here. I've got hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of books in my library, and you can see how quickly it's just navigating through. Oh, maybe my hand's in the way, actually, but it's going through very quickly. Let me just give an example of an EPUB. you can see perhaps how beautiful the screen is. You compare it here with the Supernote. This is an EPUB as well, and this is perfectly legible in daytime and when it's a well-lit room, but this is just a little bit easier on the eye, and it has the control as well here of brightness and warmth, and so the warmth is turned off in the evening. The warmth gets kicked up. I don't know if you can pick out the color there. My webcam isn't that advanced, but it does it automatically and looks after your reading in the evening. I can't remember what it's something to do with melatonin. I don't know, some chemicals that are released because of the type of light that you're seeing, and it's well aware of all of that and takes that into consideration. It's a beautiful screen, is the point I'm trying to make. This is lovely to read, and it is lovely to write on. Now, if I were to, what is this book? Okay, the sticky note function, they are really growing on me. I didn't think I'd like sticky notes, but I'm finding that it gives me space to write more when I need to. So if we were to just have a look at this first page, and I wanted to say something about here, note. That's always the way to do it, by the way. You highlight text and then add a note, and then it actually gets put into the summary digest here. So I'm going to just write, but with this little one here, it's called the fountain pen. My handwriting is just trash, and this almost makes my handwriting look half decent, which is kind of a miracle. But if I were to just, so this is a test to show how even my handwriting looks half decent. Well, to my eye it does anyway. I really like the fountain pen. I like writing on the Kindle Scribe. Now, obviously, this isn't one of these everlasting nibs such as you have on the wonderful Supernote. This is the Heart of Metal 2 with this beautiful all forever nib. But it's a lot of fun. I mean, I've gone through a couple of these Kindle Scribe nibs already, but this is a beautiful screen. I enjoy writing on the screen. The sticky notes, as I say, are growing on me. And the great thing about the sticky notes is that once you've written a number of them, you can just go up here and click on the digest function, and it will show you the text that you've highlighted together with your notes. So for books that I've been reading a lot, let me just go to a book I've read quite a bit recently, going through it a second time actually, because it's such an interesting read. That All Shall Be Saved by David Bentley Hart. And if I go up here, if I click here, then you'll see I can just scroll through page after page after page of notes and highlights that I've made. And it will link my notes with the highlights as well. So apparently I agreed here. Surely this is correct. I didn't like that big question mark. Anyway, you can see how attractive this is. I don't know if my camera's picking it up. I hope so. So here's a good example of the desirability of writing and using the Kindle Scribe. And another positive you've got to say is it's cheaper. It's just not as expensive. I actually went for the most expensive model with the most memory, for a reason that I'll come back to later on. And you could say as well, not only is it cheaper, it's directly linked as well to the entire Kindle library that you have access to. You just download them. You don't need to go through any process of conversion and all the rest of it. The only thing I would add on that is is that you can convert any Kindle documents to EPUBs that you can read over here. So the EPUB here that I've got is actually a book written by a friend of mine, Matt Lynch. I'll be interviewing him on Script before too long about this book, actually. But I bought this as a Kindle book, and I went through the process of converting it into an EPUB so that I could read it on the Supernote. And the way around that, I mean, there's a number of different ways, but it involves using Calibri. It involves often a key if it's a new book. It would involve having an older version of Kindle on your PC so that you can download the files as individual files, as Mobi documents, rather than split as the modern, the most recent iterations of the Kindle software manage it, in order to stop you copying it, really. But there are ways around, in other words, workaround. And I don't want to get into how I do that now, but you can, in theory, create EPUBs from all of your Kindle documents and put them onto the Supernote. It's just a little bit more of a job doing that. Anyway, there's the positives of the Kindle Scribe. And I think, it's really got something going for it, especially the fact that it's cheaper. And I find myself wanting to read the Kindle Scribe more often than not. The negatives of the Kindle Scribe. The functionality is the main weakness. You can't just easily swap between documents. You've got to use the Kindle library filing system and use their collections option, which isn't as useful as just a straight file system, I find, that you can have on the Supernote A5X. But also, you just can't swap quickly between two documents. Let's say I'm reading one PDF and I want to make notes on another document. It's going to be a little bit more laborious to go then to the notes and into the right file and so on. It's a little bit more awkward. With this one, it's just a little touch on the side and then a one button. Easy. Totally different. If you're dealing with multiple documents all at the same time that you need to compare and contrast, this one is going to be a little bit clunkier, the Kindle Scribe, I mean. The notes function on notebooks. I mean, what can I say about the note? It's very limited. You've got a few different types of pens, and Voya and others go through this that are good, but the templates that you can use are limited. Going between pages is limited. Using hyperlinks isn't a possibility. The software functionality here is just restricted. There's no two ways about it, and I wouldn't use this for as a note-making device. If I had another option, I would use the Supernote A5X. Speaking of which, by the way, I've got to say, I have heard exciting rumors about the Supernote A4X2. That is very exciting for an academic like me. That's exactly what you want. I mean, I've got the Books A4 device, but it's not quite as satisfying in some ways to use and write on. But I won't get into that comparison now. What else? Negatives about the Kindle Scribe. It's not easy to stop page swiping. So let's say I'm reading David Bentley Hart again, and my finger is tracing across the screen like this. I may just brush the screen and then, oops, I've skipped a page. And there doesn't seem to be a way, at least I can see, to just turn that off or have a two-finger swipe, which is what I've got on the Supernote at the moment. So you need two fingers on there, or you can even adjust it as you will. You can have a no touch, so you have to use the little arrows down here, which is what I've often used, actually. So I find that a little bit irritating sometimes. Not a big deal, but another negative about the Kindle Scribe. If you are dealing with a lot of PDF documents that you may have scanned or that you've photocopied and or that you've received from a friend, the electronic version, if it isn't precisely an A5 size or something recognizable in that regard, or A4, it will crop the PDF document by cutting off the bottom. I was shocked by this. I scanned in one book, and I didn't make all of the page sizes regular. Some were a little bit smaller, some were a little bit bigger. On most of the pages, some of the footnotes were cut off. So I had to go back and I had to standardize the entire PDF document, make it A5 size, so that it would come up on the whole screen here. And that's a pain in the arse. There's just no two ways about that. So every PDF document that you use, you've got to make sure that it's formatted in the right size, or the cropping goes crazy. Because you're not writing directly on a PDF document, but on a document that has been manipulated as it's sent through to Kindle. I mean, you can sideload on the Scribe, but then you can't annotate it in the same way. So you need to send it via email or via their app so that it gets processed by Amazon and then gets sent here. Then you can annotate it with your pen and so on. But there are weaknesses to that entire process. You're not then left with your PDF document that is on the screen, and there's no option to crop it, and there's no option either to change the so if I go to the A5X, the contrast here, I can adjust it so that if it's a little bit light, the font, I can just up the contrast and it becomes darker and more obvious for me to read it. There's no option to change contrast in the Scribe. So I've actually ended up having to scan documents in and then via my scanning software, make the fonts darker so that they're legible on the Kindle Scribe, or at least a little bit more legible. The case. I suppose this is a negative, and I love this case. Cost way too much money for what it is, but I like the fact that you can just plop it off because it's magnetized and hold it like this if that's what you want to do. And sometimes when it gets a bit heavy, might be in bed and I'm making notes, it's easier just to hold it like this. I like the fact that it's got this on the side, so my thumb has more space. That makes sense to me. I like the case, but because it's magnetized, sometimes it just falls off. And I've had to catch it before it fell on the floor a couple of times, which has been slightly annoying. This particular case, which is the standard one that goes with it, you can put up like this, which is really useful on that angle, or of course turning it around like this, also useful. I like the case, but I have mixed feelings about it because of the way in which it falls out. It lacks security. Now the Supernote case, this beautiful leather one, is, I mean, I just love that. I think it's super. Also magnetized. Obviously it slides in there, but it knows when you've opened it to turn on. I prefer the case. It needs to be said for the Supernote. Oh, on the size thing, when I'm traveling, I will use the Supernote. I use this case to protect the Supernote. You find this on Amazon probably, certainly in the UK. I don't know what's its make. The Tech Gear. Supernote goes in fine, A5 size, but because it's slightly wider and not as tall, the Scribe, it doesn't fit in this. So I've had some difficulties finding a case that's an appropriate size. I've got a much bigger case that does the job, but it's not as useful as this A5 one over there, which is exactly right for the Supernote. So my wife ended up making this case for me, nice little magnetized thing to put my Scribe in. But this is very much bespoke and made by my lovely wife, rather than something you can just get quickly on Amazon. So the case, as I say, mixed feelings about it, but also the case to put it in when I'm traveling. because of the dimensions of this device, can be a little bit more tricky to find the right thing. Not so for the Supernote. Anyway, that's probably enough. I could say so much more, positives and negatives, I think, about the Kindle Scribe on the basis of me being an academic. But I will say this. I'm reading more on the Scribe at the moment, simply because of the front lighting. I can read it anywhere. And because summer hasn't really hit us yet, I needed a little bit of a bump with the lighting. And I do love writing with that fountain pen option. It's as silly as that. I'm not making many notes on some of the texts that I'm processing at the moment. If I were to have to do that, it would be back more with the Supernote, which offers so much more functionality for me as an academic. But now let's turn to the Supernote. Nice little magnetized pen on the Kindle Scribe, by the way. The clips on there. The Supernote Positives. This can do pretty much everything this does, and more. But you pay for that. The first thing is that it has a sticky notes function if that's what you want. So here's an EPUB, and you can do this as well with PDFs. You've got the option to open and close square brackets, which brings up this underline, and you tap on that, and it takes you through to here, where you've got all the room in the world to write X, Y, Z. Go back, and in the same way, you've got a digest function that you can have a look at, same as with the Kindle. And in distinction from the Kindle Scribe, where you couldn't just write on the document, this is an EPUB. I can write all over this if I want. Now, Matt, I'm going to be interviewing you soon about your book. Let's put a big fat question mark next to some of these things that you've written. And you can underline it in the traditional way. And of course, you can change very simply how you're doing that as well. So all of this, I think, is incredibly useful. A little bit more flexibility, to be frank, certainly with EPUBs. But with PDFs, it's the same. In fact, let's not go there. Let's go to recent. So I've swiped down here, recent file. There I am. I just go back to the previous one. This is what I mean about functionality. Very easy to go between documents and notes and all the rest of it. Here's a PDF. If I wanted to, I could, oops, let's put that as a pen again. Let me write again. Descartes' ultimate aim in the Meditations is to establish claims in the sciences. Let's just put square brackets around there. There you go again. You just tap on that if you want to and make some notes. So you've got sticky notes, as it were, something like that, and underlining and whatever else you want to do. So it gives you a little bit more flexibility for annotating documents. Also, incredibly important. I just had a lovely interruption there. So just to get back to where were we? We were talking about PDF covers. Now, notice here on the Kindle Scribe, there are some documents here that don't have covers. The ones that do, they're EPUBs. Over here, you will notice, let me just change it so it approximates. These are all PDFs and they've got covers. So why can't the Kindle Scribe manage that? It does make it easier to navigate when you've got a lot of files, as I do, hundreds and hundreds of these things. I consider that a weakness, and I have emailed the team at Kindle and said, what's going on with this? Please make this a possibility. But they're sort of hidden behind layers of administration, so I have no idea if the message has even gotten through. Hope so, but that would be good. And as I've mentioned, another positive about the Supernote is that you can change the contrast and crop PDFs in a very straightforward way. So how to be radical in philosophy, Gainsford. This particular document, trim I've already done that, but so this ebook belongs to, and then it's me down here. I just cut that out because I didn't need it there, and I've shortened it just to make it bigger on the screen. Very, very easy to do. And if I wanted to make it a little bit easier to see, I've done that. I've increased the contrast so that the fonts pop out a little bit better. None of that is possible on the Kindle Scribe. And then some of the documents that I've imported through have been far less easy to read, even though it's front-lit, because the contrast isn't adjustable. They used to have this, or they do have this as an option for EPUBs, I think, but not for PDFs. Correct me if I'm wrong, but either way, this is a big advantage, I find, when you're dealing with a lot of PDFs that vary in size. Some of the journal articles, of course, they can be quite small. So you've got the option here of a half-page view, which you don't have with the Kindle Scribe. You can't turn it here and read it. It doesn't work in that way. Again, the Kindle Scribe software doesn't help. So there's some of the positives with the Supernote. I mean, I don't want to double up what I've said, but some of the negatives that I mentioned about the Scribe are negatives precisely because the Supernote can do it. And I've sort of tried to make that connection where it was obvious. I'm trying to think of an example. The files, the file system. So if I want to find a document here, it's just a bog standard file system, a file within a file within a file, rather than the collections option on the Kindle Scribe. I much prefer the filing system, especially when you're dealing with as many books that I have and that many academics will have. Supernote is superior in that regard. Okay, Supernote Negatives. I got this one, I think it's 64 gigabytes of storage. There's a way I can tell. Here, device options, maybe. Advanced options, storage management. Yeah, okay. Well, 64. The rest is taken up with system stuff, I suppose. And I need that space. This device, and I might need to be careful what I'm putting on the screen at the moment. Has 32 gigabytes of space, and I've long since used that up. Some of the PDF documents that I work with are very large. Some of them are PDFs in series that total up to be an awful lot. So I don't have all of my PDFs on here that I would like. They're all on the books device, but not on the A5X because of the 32 gigabyte problem. Now you can easily just plug something in at the bottom here, and then hey presto, you've got some external and you can use those. It's not a deal breaker, but I prefer more space. Being an academic, and that's how I'm seeing this, you've got a little bit more functionality and optionality with the Scribe. The hardware, you know, Supernote are like the opposite of the Scribe in this regard. Their hardware, I dare say, isn't as advanced as with the Kindle Scribe, yet their software is miles, light years ahead of where the Scribe is. So in a sense, that they're working, they're getting the best out of this. They're squeezing everything out of this hardware in terms of speed and functionality, but it can be a bit slower. When you're turning a page sometime and the PDF document is large, it can take a little bit longer. This is snappier. Now, Voya published a video, for me it was just earlier today, on the 11th of April 2023, in which he's talking about the future for Supernote and some of their devices for the future. Now, they deliberately plan not to make their devices obsolete, and that's terrific. The disadvantage, of course, is that their hardware can be a little bit lagging behind in terms of what it can do. The Scribe is a little bit snappier in that regard, but Supernote, they're coming out with some new devices, and I can't afford to get any, but if I were to think about now a Supernote device, I might want to wait until the A5X comes out. That could be, snappier than the A5X and up to speed with the Scribe. Who knows? Anyway, hardware is a little bit slower, I would say. This is very superficial, really, but I love the Heart of Metal pen. I love writing with this. It feels like quality, and I love the fact that I don't need to replace that nib. And Heart of Metal 2 beats the Heart of Metal 1 because the Heart of Metal 1 would often ghost after a few months of usage. This one seems to me a little bit more stable. That's how I'm seeing it at the moment. But the pen with the Kindle Scribe has a couple of advantages. Not only is there the option of writing with the fountain note. I mean, Supernote could easily add that, of course, which I love writing with the Supernote, with the fountain pen option in the Scribe. But there's a rubber on the back, and there's a little button there that you can use, whether it's for rubbing out or whether it's as I've got it here. I'll show you. I'll just go into this note that I wrote. And then if I click the button here, I've changed it so that it's a highlight, grey highlight here. And there's the fountain pen. If I want to rub that out, I just turn it over and it's gone. Now, it doesn't feel as quality as the Supernote A5X Heart of Metal 2. It doesn't have the infinite nib, but it's great to write with, and I enjoy that. And I think a weakness of the Supernote is that you don't have the button, you don't have the eraser on the back. That would have been great in a Heart of Metal 2. This has its weaknesses, this pen, in comparison, but I will consider the fact that this pen, that it doesn't have an eraser and a little option button, is a weakness. So there we are. My comparison between the two devices. I've probably been way too wordy. I don't know if this is even half appropriate to upload onto YouTube, but I will, at the bottom, the end of the day, if I had to get rid of one, let's say, and I could only stick with one of them, it would have to be staying with the Supernote, simply because of its functionality. And I mentioned the backlighting earlier on. If it's a real issue, you can get one of these, for crying out loud. You just clip it on to the Supernote, and I've done this often. And I got this thing from Amazon. It's Vecchia. It wasn't that expensive, and there's a number of different lighting options. You probably can't see it well with the camera, but there's daylight, cold and warm options. It's very bright, and it lights up the entire screen. Of course, if you're holding this in your hand and you've got to clip this on, it adds a little bit of weight, which isn't really desirable, but it's fine. I mean, you can get away with it like this. Oops, I've turned that around. There we are. That's more sturdy. So the backlighting, or front lighting rather, is certainly a weakness, but it's not insurmountable. There are options. I mean, you could even have one of those night lamps that you put around your head when you're taking the trash out. You can use that to read this if that's built. So the main thing about the screen and the front lighting and the snappiness of the device, and another 20 quid and you've got it covered, more or less, with the Supernote. And then you've got all of the strengths of the Supernote, its functionality, in particular the way you can annotate different documents. So if I had to get rid of one, it would be getting rid of the Kindle Scribe. However, I really enjoy reading with the Kindle Scribe. There's no two ways about it. I love the thumb edge here, that you can just hold it a little bit easier. I love the fountain pen option, as I've said, and it's a beautiful screen to read. Makes it easier to read Kindle documents. anyway, because you've got to go through the conversion process in order to get it here. And sometimes they're a little bit more stubborn because they want to protect their files. I'm not in any way endorsing piracy and breach of copyright, by the way. I would never share those documents with anyone else. Just make it clear. But it is handier, obviously, just reading it straight through once you've purchased it on the Kindle Scribe. They are my thoughts. Be interested to hear what your experiences have been. If you have any questions about either of these devices, then please drop me a message. I will try to answer them all in the comments section. And otherwise, a very happy Easter to all of you. And I look forward to seeing you again in a future video.